The Scouts had a few commanders over the years. In our story, we got to know 4 different ones. The Scouts' main objective was always to explore the world beyond the walls, but each commander had to face different issues at the time they were in command. Today, we're going to explore each of those commanders, their unique struggles, their dreams, and of course, their overall contribution. Oh, and did I say 4 commanders? I meant 6. So yeah, let's talk about it. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel for a new Attack on Titan video. Today it's all about commanders, but it's also about the evolution of the Scouts, from terrible times to glorious times. And for extra fun, I'm going to introduce you to 2 commanders that lived 80 years before our story started. Both featured in Attack on Titan Before the Fall, a 17-volume manga all about the history and creation of the ODM device. So let's dive right in and get this out of the way. Let me start with my least favorite commander, which might surprise you. Armin, a commander for a day. Now don't get me wrong, I have no issues with Armin as a character, but he was one of the most insignificant commanders, and here is why. The Scouts' objective at that point was to stop Eren and save the world. That was already the objective when Hanji was alive and Armin just followed. He didn't have any significant or different ideology than the rest of the group. Not to mention that by the time he took over, there were no Scouts, so he was basically a squad leader at best. Armin's decision-making was very crucial in the past, but here he just didn't stand out, especially because it was a joint effort and Armin didn't make any important or controversial decisions on his own. Even the idea of exploding over Eren's Titan was actually Peak's idea and not Armin's, so he would have done this anyway, regardless of being the commander or not. And again, just to make this clear, I am not criticizing him as a character. Armin is great, only not as a commander. As a commander, he was the least effective one, and also the one who had the title for the shortest time. Next, we have one of my favorite characters, Shadis, the bystander. Shadis was the 12th commander before Erwin. In his time, the main objective was also exploration, but Shadis also had his personal dream and objective. Wanted to expand humanity's territory beyond Wall Maria. He wished to build bases outside of the walls that will allow humanity to travel farther and explore a larger area. This was basically a very good idea, but sadly, the Titans kept destroying those bases, even the ones that were built on trees. In addition, the Scouts suffered extreme casualties each time they went outside. That made the public look down at them, as we can see in the first episode when they joke about the Scouts being useless and upsetting young Eren. Eventually gave up on his dream. He understood he couldn't actually make a change, almost like a bystander in his own story. Looked up to Grisha, who was successful and achieved everything he wanted, something never could. He was also powerless in stopping Grisha from passing his Titan or stopping Eren from joining the Scouts. He felt like a bystander all of his life, until his final moments, when he finally made a change and saved the Scouts. Shadis had good intentions, but he didn't make an impact as a commander and couldn't make his dream come true. That's why he stood down and let his second-in-command, Erwin, take over. After that, retired from the battlefield and became the head instructor of basic training. And now it's time to introduce a commander a lot of you didn't know about. He is one of the 2 commanders who are part of Attack on Titan Before the Fall, a time the Scouts were at their lowest point. Carlo Pikale. Carlo commanded the Scouts about 60 years ago. In those times, life inside the walls was even less technological, and the ODM device was still in its first stages and wasn't deployed to all soldiers. That made fighting Titans practically impossible. As a person, Carlo was very similar to Erwin. You can say they have the same vibe as commanders. Carlo's main interest was always to protect humanity and to keep the Scouts alive, but also to explore the grounds beyond the walls as far as possible, and to find out as much as they can about the Titans. Carlo lived in rough times. Unlike the Scouts in our story, his soldiers were not trained to kill Titans. Later in his term, the final version of the ODM device will be created, but only one person was able to operate it back then. The protagonist of the story, the son of Titan, Kuklo. Only later, the first ODM squad was created, finally training soldiers to fight and kill Titans. Carlo took over the Scouts at a time they were about to be disbanded, and against all odds, he was able to bring results. He was a great commander that truly cared about humanity and that genuinely always tried to do the right thing. Moving on to one of my personal favorite commanders and characters, Hange Zoe. Hanji commanded the scouts in a very complicated time, from being persecuted by the police to the uprising and taking control over the government, all the way to the restructuring of the country. Hanji needed to switch between being a soldier, a scientist, a leader, and sometimes a politician and a diplomat. After Sanes promised Hanji they will soon find themselves in his position, that eventually happened, and Hanji as a commander had to do the same things the scouts were against, like, for example, not letting the public know what's going on. That is how Hanji learned the burden of command and what it is like to be on the other side, protecting the public by keeping them in the dark, all to maintain order. In addition, Hanji was the commander during the expedition to clear all titans from the island, and also the first to command an operation outside of Paradise Island. No matter how you look at it, Hanji had a ton of work as a commander, and it was extremely diverse. Hanji's final wish as a commander was to prevent the mass-scale killing or omnicide done by Erwin, and Armin that took over next just kept the same ideology and course of action Hanji did. Also different from other commanders, Hanji was part of the peace talks with Hizuru, which is something only Armin will do later in Marley. The scouts knew terrible times, but in my opinion, Hanji was in command during the most politically complicated time. And we all know that time wasn't lacking in action. And because all of that, I consider Hanji one of the most influential commanders the scouts ever had. Moving on to the second commander from the past, which was also the father of Carlo. I call him the commander with of steel. Wait, can I say Am I being censored right now? Anyway, his were made of steel. Jorge Pikale, the first known commander of the scouts, led the scouts in the most dangerous of times, around the year 770s. Jorge lived in the time before the inventions of the ODM device and the Titan blades, so basically, during his time, there was no weapon to kill a Titan, and even worse, the weak spot of a Titan wasn't discovered yet. Humanity had never killed a Titan, and they were considered immortal. Jorge led the scouts in a time they had no way to deal with them, but his main objective was always to capture and study one to find a way to kill them. Later, Jorge will be known as the first man to ever kill a Titan, but that was a strategic lie. The truth was, another soldier accidentally killed a Titan when he detonated explosives next to his head. Jorge used the fact they killed the Titan to prevent the government from disbanding the scouts. That kept the scouts alive, but the next expedition outside will take place only 15 years later, when his son Carlo will lead the scouts. Jorge was an incredible character and one of the bravest people in this story, but like Keith Shadis, he was much more crucial to the story after he left the command. His character will introduce the protagonist Kuklo to the ODM, the Titan Snapblades, and more secrets from Paradise Island, including the Iceburst Stone. And now, we move to everyone's favorite commander, which is also the one with the biggest demons and eyebrows. Erwin Smith. Honestly, I can make an entire video about Erwin, so let me know if I should, but today we're talking about only the role of a commander. So what did Erwin do? Erwin was all about the object of exploration, but unlike the ones before him, he made the biggest progress. That was because he invented a system to map the outside using smoke signals. That helped to map the area and also to prevent casualties. Erwin's role as a commander was mainly around exploration, fighting titans, and capturing them for Hanji to study. He was there during the uprising and political mess, and he was influential, but by then he already passed the command to Hanji. Every commander had some big ambition, a dream to breach the walls and find the truth out there, but the sad truth is, Erwin's dream was the most insignificant one, and I will explain. Erwin was haunted by his father's death. He died after revealing the fact that the history of the outside was changed or falsified. From that day, Erwin was set in his heart to prove his father's theory, but since he found out about Eren and Grisha, his dream was downgraded even more than that. Now all he wanted was just to reach the basement. He later told this to Levi, which made Levi understand he cares for something else more than he cared for humanity's victory. Levi understood that even before then, when Erwin demanded to be on the battlefield to witness the world changing, even after he was injured. Levi asked him if being there was more important than humanity winning this fight, and Erwin simply answered, yes. You could see how amazed Levi was and how much it disappointed him. He watched the man he followed and finally saw his selfish side, how small his dream became to reach the basement. Erwin's dream wasn't as big as Armin's, and Levi saw in his eyes what he once saw in Erwin's eyes. That's why he chose Armin, because Armin looked passionately into the future, while Erwin looked desperately into the past. And as his redemption, and maybe also punishment, Erwin perished before he could breach that wall hiding the truth and reach the basement. In a way, he was denied his promised land, and he finally accepted it when he talked to Levi for the last time. Erwin Smith was a commander through and through. Unlike Armin, Shadis, and others, he had the charisma and qualities of a leader, someone who makes people want to follow him, even someone as untamed as Levi. So yes, he was led by a small dream, and probably lots of people would not follow him if they knew what he really wanted. But I will also argue that no one else could have led the people as he did, or make hard decisions like he could, even if it was out of selfishness. Erwin also got to witness the scouts going from being hated to being admired by the public, something that never happened before. Leading the scouts served his interests, but his leadership served the interest of everyone else who needed a devil to lead them and couldn't do it themselves. Erwin was selfish and flawed, and that's what made him such a great character. And without a doubt, humanity could never breach those walls without him. And that is why Erwin Smith is the commander that made the biggest change and the one that brought the most results. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you think in the comments. Do you want to know more about the times of Attack on Titan before the fall? And what do you think about Carlo and Jorge? Also, let me know which one from today's list is your favorite commander. I will see you all real soon in my next video, and even sooner in the comments. But until next time, let me just remind you all to dedicate your hearts to all of humanity, inside and outside the walls.